In Part 2, Holmes's investigation revealed that Madame Vasquez had received a mysterious package before her performance and engaged in a heated argument with Maestro Zimmermann about revealing the truth. Evidence of blackmail emerged, along with technical anomalies, including a power surge and surveillance gaps at the moment of disappearance. The discovery that Zimmermann had died mysteriously in Vienna prompted Holmes and Watson to travel to Austria to continue their investigation. The Orient Express carried us through the grey October landscape toward Vienna, its rhythmic clacking providing an oddly soothing backdrop to Holmes's intense contemplation. He had spoken little since we departed London, instead filling page after page with notes, diagrams, and what appeared to be mathematical calculations. "Holmes," I ventured as we crossed into Austria, "surely you have formed some preliminary theory about this conspiracy?" He looked up from his notebook, his grey eyes reflecting the lamplight. "Several theories, Watson, each more disturbing than the last. Tell me, what do you know of the European classical music establishment?" "Very little beyond what any educated gentleman might know. Why do you ask?" "Because I suspect we are dealing with corruption that extends far beyond a single disappearance. Consider the facts. Madame Vasquez spoke of living a lie and being forced into action. Maestro Zimmermann, her apparent co-conspirator, dies under suspicious circumstances within days of her vanishing, and both were prominent figures in the international music world. The train pulled into Vienna's Westbahnhof as dawn was breaking over the imperial city. Inspector Franz Hoffmann of the Vienna police met us on the platform, a compact, efficient man whom Holmes had assisted on a previous case involving stolen Habsburg artifacts. "Herr Holmes, Dr. Watson," he greeted us in excellent English, "I am most grateful for your swift arrival. The circumstances surrounding Maestro Zimmermann's death grow more peculiar by the hour." We were driven through the awakening streets to the elegant Hotel Imperial, where Zimmermann had taken his final residence. The conductor's suite on the 4th floor overlooked the Ringstrasse, its windows offering a magnificent view of the State Opera House. "The body was discovered yesterday evening by hotel staff," Inspector Hoffmann explained as we examined the scene. "Zimmermann had failed to respond to telephone calls, and when the manager used his key to check on him, the bedroom presented a scene of apparent natural death. Maestro Zimmermann lay peacefully in bed, still wearing his night clothes, with no visible signs of violence or struggle. Yet Holmes immediately began his characteristic detailed examination. The position of the body suggests he died in his sleep, I observed from a medical perspective. Quite consistent with heart failure or similar natural causes." "Perhaps," Holmes murmured, studying the bedside table through his magnifying glass. "Inspector Hoffmann, what did the preliminary medical examination reveal?" "Heart failure as doctor," Watson suggested. "Zimmermann was 72 years old, had a history of cardiac problems. The hotel physician saw nothing suspicious." Holmes moved to the sitting room, where Zimmermann's personal effects were laid out on an elegant writing desk. Sheet music, correspondence, and what appeared to be financial documents were arranged in neat piles. "Has anyone examined these papers thoroughly?" "Only superficially. They appear to be routine business correspondence and musical scores." Holmes began methodically reviewing each document. Most proved to be exactly what they appeared: contracts for performances, letters from music publishers, hotel receipts from his travels. But one manila envelope, tucked beneath a stack of scores, immediately captured his attention. "Watson, observe this," he said, extracting several photographs from the envelope. The images were clearly surveillance photographs, taken with a telephoto lens. They showed Madame Vasquez in various locations, entering a bank in Geneva, meeting with an unidentified man in a Paris cafe, boarding a train in Rome. All appear to have been taken within the past few months. Zimmermann was having her followed, I concluded, or someone was providing him with evidence of her activities. Look at this. Holmes produced a letter written in German, which Inspector Hoffmann translated. My dear Friedrich, the attached photographs confirm our suspicions about Eleanor's recent activities. She has made contact with Johann Weiss in Geneva and appears to be preparing for full disclosure. We cannot allow this to proceed. The Consortium has too much at stake. You must convince her to reconsider, or we will be forced to implement the final protocol. K. The Consortium? I repeated. What manner of organisation requires a final protocol? Holmes studied the letter intently. Inspector Hoffmann, I require all information your department possesses about this Johann Weiss in Geneva. Also, any intelligence regarding musical organisations or cartels operating in Central Europe. Of course, Herr Holmes. But may I ask what connection you suspect between these documents and Maestro Zimmermann's death? I suspect, Inspector, that Zimmermann was murdered to prevent him from revealing information about this consortium. His death may appear natural, but I believe we will find evidence of a more subtle form of elimination. Holmes spent the next hour conducting an exhaustive examination of the hotel suite. He tested the ventilation system, examined the bathroom fixtures, and subjected every glass and bottle to careful scrutiny. It was in the small refrigerator that he made his crucial discovery. Watson, what do you make of this? He handed me a small vial of what appeared to be insulin, the type used by diabetics. Was Zimmermann diabetic? Inspector Hoffmann consulted his notes. According to his medical records, no. He had heart problems, but no history of diabetes. Holmes examined the vial more closely. This insulin has been tampered with. Someone has injected an additional substance, something that would not be detected in a routine examination of a diabetic's medication, but which would be highly suspicious in a non-diabetic's possession. You believe he was poisoned with contaminated insulin? I believe someone administered a substance designed to induce heart failure in a manner that would appear entirely natural. Insulin, in massive doses, can cause fatal hypoglycemia that mimics heart attack. But our killer made one crucial error. Which was? Holmes indicated a small puncture mark on Zimmermann's upper arm, barely visible beneath his nightshirt. The injection site. A diabetic would inject insulin into the abdomen or thigh. This placement suggests forcible administration by another person. Inspector Hoffmann immediately summoned the medical examiner for a more thorough autopsy, while Holmes continued his investigation of Zimmermann's papers. Among the musical scores, he discovered something that made him pause. Watson, look at this composition. It appears to be an original work by Zimmermann, but notice the dedication. The manuscript was titled Elegy for a Lost Voice and bore the dedication, "For Eleanor, whose truth will outlive us all." A posthumous message, I suggested, or a confession. See here, Zimmermann has written notes in the margins that appear to be instructions rather than musical directions. Holmes studied the annotated score carefully. The marginal notes were in a mixture of German and what appeared to be musical code, references to specific measures and movements that seemed to correspond to locations and dates. Inspector Hoffmann, I believe this score contains information about the Consortium's activities, encoded in musical notation. We must find someone capable of deciphering it. Our breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Professor Maria Kellner, a musicologist at the Vienna Conservatory and old friend of Zimmermann's, agreed to examine the mysterious score. This is extraordinary, she told us in her cluttered office overlooking the Danube. Friedrich has embedded a complete narrative within these musical annotations. Look here, this passage in D minor corresponds to what he calls the Geneva Deception. This forte passage represents the London finale. Can you decode the complete message? Professor Kellner worked for several hours, translating Zimmermann's musical code into plain German, which Inspector Hoffmann then rendered into English. The Consortium has controlled European classical music for 20 years through blackmail, financial manipulation, and elimination of witnesses. Elena discovered the truth about the fixed competitions, the purchased critical reviews, the systematic destruction of independent artists. She threatened to expose everything unless they allowed her to retire quietly. They could not permit this. The London performance was intended to be her final appearance, not through disappearance, but through death disguised as accident. I participated in the deception to save her life, but I fear my betrayal has doomed us both. The truth must survive even if we do not. The complete records are hidden where only Eleanor would think to look, in the place where her career truly began. Holmes leaned back in his chair, his expression grim. So Madame Vasquez's disappearance was not an escape, but a rescue operation. Zimmermann helped stage her vanishing to save her from assassination. But where is she now? I asked. And what is this place where her career began? Professor Kellner consulted her extensive files on European musicians. Elena Vasquez made her professional debut at the Mozarteum in Salzburg 18 years ago. She was just 19, playing in a student competition that launched her international career. Holmes rose immediately. Inspector Hoffmann, we must travel to Salzburg without delay, and I suggest we bring armed officers. If my deductions are correct, we will find Madame Vasquez alive but in considerable danger. The drive to Salzburg took us through the stunning Austrian countryside, now ablaze with autumn colours. Holmes remained silent for most of the journey, but as we approached Mozart's birthplace, he finally shared his complete theory. Watson, consider the elegant complexity of this crime. The Consortium needed to eliminate Vasquez permanently, but could not risk a conventional murder that might trigger investigation into their activities. Instead, they devised an impossible disappearance that would be attributed to supernatural causes rather than criminal ones. But Zimmermann betrayed them by actually helping her escape? Precisely. The power surge, the surveillance gaps, the missing costume, all were part of an elaborate stagecraft designed to convince the audience that they had witnessed genuine magic rather than skilled deception. Somewhere in those 30 seconds of confusion, Vasquez was spirited away through technical means that none of us have yet fully understood. And Zimmermann was eliminated when the Consortium realized he had betrayed them, but they underestimated his foresight in leaving behind the encoded confession. We arrived at the Mozarteum as evening shadows were lengthening across Salzburg's Baroque architecture. The music conservatory was largely empty, its practice rooms and concert halls echoing with ghostly silence. Where would she hide? Inspector Hoffmann wondered, as we searched the building systematically. Holmes paused in the main concert hall, studying the acoustic shell behind the stage. Watson, remember what the message said, where her career truly began. Not just where she performed, but where she first discovered her true calling. We found her in the basement archives, in a small practice room that had been converted into storage for old scores and recordings. Madame Elena Vasquez sat at an ancient piano, her fingers moving silently over keys that produced no sound. She looked up as we entered, her dark eyes reflecting both relief and resignation. Mr. Holmes, I presume? Friedrich told me you would eventually unravel the truth. Madame Vasquez, Holmes replied gently, you are in considerable danger. The people who killed Maestro Zimmermann will not hesitate to eliminate you as well. She nodded sadly. I have been hiding here for 4 days, knowing that discovery was inevitable. But I could not leave Austria without ensuring that Friedrich's sacrifice was not in vain. The complete records Zimmermann mentioned, you have them. From beneath the piano bench, she produced a leather satchel filled with documents, photographs and what appeared to be financial records. 20 years of evidence, Mr. Holmes. Proof of how the Consortium has corrupted every aspect of classical music in Europe. Fixed competitions, purchased reviews, eliminated rivals. They have turned art into commerce and beauty into commodity. Holmes examined the documents briefly. This is certainly sufficient to destroy the organization and send dozens of people to prison. But first, we must ensure your safety. As if summoned by his words, we heard footsteps in the corridor above. Inspector Hoffman immediately drew his weapon and positioned himself by the door. "They have found us," Vasquez whispered, just as Friedrich feared they would. Holmes extinguished the room's single lamp, plunging us into darkness. "Watson, you and Madame Vasquez remain here. Inspector Hoffman and I will create a diversion." But as he reached for the door handle, a familiar voice echoed down the stairwell. "Mr. Holmes, there is no need for dramatics. We merely wish to discuss a business arrangement." The voice belonged to Sir Reginald Blackwood, director of the Royal Opera House and the man who had first brought this case to our attention. Holmes's jaw tightened with grim understanding. "Watson, it appears we have discovered the identity of Case, the Consortium's London representative. The trap was closing around us, and our enemies had played their hand with masterful precision. The final act of this deadly drama was about to begin. With Sir Reginald Blackwood revealed as the London head of the sinister Consortium, Holmes, Watson, and their allies find themselves trapped in the basement of the Mozarteum. How will they escape this deadly confrontation, and what explosive secrets will finally be revealed about the vanishing violinist? Stay tuned for Part 4, the final performance, where all mysteries will be solved and justice will prevail. Don't forget to like and subscribe for the thrilling conclusion, and ring that bell icon so you won't miss the dramatic finale of this extraordinary case.